Tech Talk. This is our first brand new um, web series on modern technologies and software development approaches. And today we are going to discuss about the best development approaches for tech projects. And we have a stream panel and guest on this webinar. And my name is Asim Siddiqui. I am the CTO and co-founder of TekRevol, and I will be your moderator for today. So without further wait, I would like to introduce my panel and expert panel of guests, and starting with Adam Horner. Adam, CTO and the co-founder of Synova Technology, and he has over 30 years of experience in software development and engineering expertise, and he specializes in accelerating tech startups and strategic guidance.
Hi, hello there. Thanks for having me, Asim.
Hey, Adam, how are you? So we have second guest, Halid Musa. He is the CTO of BitFlex with over 15 years of experience, lead the development of secure and regulated hybrid exchange for digital assets. He has extensive experience in crypto, blockchain, and programmatic media technologies. Welcome on board. Hey, Halid, how are you doing?
I hope you can hear me now. Hey, everyone.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah. And we have our third guest, Riaz Raza, the Director of Engineering at AppVerticals with 20 years of experience. And he leads the cloud application projects on Azure and AWS. He is skilled in .NET, SQL, NoSQL, Hadoop, and Python for data science and machine learning. So welcome on board.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Riaz. All right. So thanks very much for joining us today. And like I said in the start, on the backside, these all experts have like more than a decade of experience. So of course, this conversation is going to be a really, really exciting based on their experiences in diverse technology and skill set. Then I'm sure that you will like the discussion and all the different parts that is essential for developing the right frameworks or organization to set up for the technology side. So in this particular session, we will be discussing and covering the transition of a waterfall methodology towards the agile, and then the rise of DevOps technologies, and then hybrid technologies that is actually helping toward the future trends of the software development approaches. So I will be taking your questions also, so feel free to post your questions over here anytime, and we will have a complete Q&A session later on. So without further wait, let's start and let's dive in further. So starting with the very first topic, that is about navigating the software development landscape. And this is all about agile, waterfall, and DevOps, and all other frameworks that are required or that are already available in the market. So starting with the opening statement, I would like to mention about the way the modern software development methodologies have evolved and the technology advancement in terms of cloud computing, IoT, artificial intelligence, all that require a significant flexibility and adoption right now. And with that only, there is a lot of competition and of course the customer requirement in terms of fast and quick deliveries is something that is an essential for any organization or especially for the CTOs. So I would like to hear more from you, especially from our main guest, and what is your take about that? So starting with Adam, what's your take about this future landscape of development technologies?
I mean, I think the main thing at the moment is the pace of change, and just keeping up with it as an engineering leader is something that is important. It's very easy for us to get locked into the same ways we have been doing things for a while and not to sort of look up, but look out and see at the changes that are coming on, whether that's thinking in terms of Kanban versus Agile, whether it's looking at the tools we can use from AI platforms and usages, likes of ChatGPT, and of course the other open source AIs, Mistral, and the others that are much easier to use, like Llama, where you can just download it and start using it straight away, and integrating those both into the way that we work and into the software that we actually build. So I think keeping up with changes is one of the big challenges, which I think is interesting to look at the moment.
Right. And Musa, Halid, like how this technology advancement has changed your processes in the organization, and that has actually impact on your working practices.
I would say in the software development sphere that we're in today, I would say, unfortunately, we're still stuck, as Adam actually just rightly pointed out, we are still stuck in the old methodology. So we didn't have yet an introduction of AI, of these newer ways and methods in software development. All these methodologies have been introduced more than a decade ago, and they're still very prominent in our day-to-day. Even I am guilty as charged when it comes to that. It's actually a very interesting take to see how AI would help us shape, let's say, the day-to-day of interaction between product development, testing teams, and of course DevOps in the end. So definitely would be interested to hear from the other panelists on their opinion on how AI could help us maybe make this process a bit more streamlined and a bit more efficient.
Cool. And Riaz, what is your take on this particular inception and, of course, advancement of the technology?
I think it has been outpacing pretty much every company out there. The advancement in the technology, I don't think any company has been able to completely harness the power of these new technologies that are coming in pretty much like every day. Like every day when I go out there and I see things happening, it gives me anxiety because I feel like I have been lagging. So it's something that we as technology leaders are facing most, like we are at the forefront of that misery, I would say. And it's not just the other companies which are out there which are not related to technology even. So the thought that how much I'm lacking, and then thinking about the companies which are not even where I am, I think this is like a sun in the universe which we haven't been able to completely harness the power of. So I think it's really exciting times, but I think there's so much more that we are going to see in the future when actually things start using these technologies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think when you look at the history of engineering, I mean, you think of civil engineering, you've got 2,000 years of history. If you look at military engineering, you've got about 3,000 years of history, right? If you look at software engineering, we've got about 60, 70 years of history at the most on the commercial end of the scale. So all these things we're adding into our toolbox now, it's easy to forget these aren't evolutions, these are additions, and filling out our toolbox that we're only just having really for the first time. And so picking the right tool for the right problem is part of the challenge, because we're futurists, we're technologists, we got in for the reason we like the shiny stuff. And the temptation is always to use the latest, most recently available, even if it isn't the most applicable in the right situation.
I like how that sounds, Adam. The problem is we love to build the most advanced products, but when it comes to processes, you would see us engineers quite stuck in the old, outdated ways of doing things. And please, no changes, just let it be. So it is true. We are futurists. So we are technologists. We love to build good stuff, but then how to apply this future onto processes, that is the challenge.
It's
So
almost
it is like another important part about, like, just because you guys are all engineering leaders and you have like ample experience leading the teams and applying a lot of different technology implementation for sure. Like, and being a CTO, like one of the core responsibilities is to like own the company technology strategy completely and then deploy that strategies. Of course, you have to make those decisions that has an impact on the organization growth and success for sure. So what's your kind of how do you like really experiment or implement these new technologies, and what is your process of doing this on the personal capacity or as well as with your teams?
This is one of my favorite topics in terms of strategy, because I think the most important thing about a technology strategy is that it isn't sort of at a different alignment than the main business goals. If you can bring the business goals and the technology strategy into alignment so it's all going in the same direction, then you've got a powerful technology strategy. And if as part of that technology strategy you have some experimentation, which might be tangential, it might be additive, but it's got to be separate from the core strategy, which is to satisfy the business goals. There's very few occasions when you have a technology strategy which aligns with business goals, which is purely to be innovative and on the cutting edge. I mean, if you are OpenAI, if you are Microsoft, then that's a key part of it. But the majority of businesses, they need to do what the business does first and foremost, and then use the additional technologies as an addition.
Right.
I think that's the biggest challenge a CTO faces, like completely mapping the technology onto the business problems. And actually, I would say that it's the other way around, like driving the technology strategy from the business. I think that's the most difficult job that we as CTOs face. Like it's pretty much the most against our personality, because we are mostly tech oriented people, and this is purely a business area.
So anything different did you guys do recently, especially with the advancement of AI? We know all from the last 1 and 2 years, like there have been a lot of tools popping up on the daily basis. There is a lot of advancements happening. How have you been guys coping up with these kind of advancement and making sure that your team and your organization is up to date with that latest curve of advancement? And how are you making sure that this is something that is benefiting your organization too?
A couple of years ago, one of my key customers had exactly the same question. And so we started looking at, about a year ago, started looking at exactly that question. And rather than just picking one tool and going with it, or forcing everybody to go down the same route, I decided to take the approach of, well, let's give everybody a budget and then see how many engineers use that budget to buy some tooling so they can use it in their work. And then after a period of about 6 months, we did a bit of analysis on who was which tools and which ones worked well for them. And probably unsurprisingly, there was no sort of single best answer. There were different tools that worked better in different environments. So, for example, the DevOps engineer who's sort of working across a lot of different technologies, putting lots of different pieces together, worked better with a much more generic tool like ChatGPT that would cover a lot of use cases.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who works almost all of their time in C# preferred to have something that was built into the IDE, very close to the code they're working with, and had the immediate context of the kind of code they were working on. So it's been, the right tool for the right job has been the finding for me so far.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. Adding on top of that, like I think the most difficult part about using the tooling is as you get higher in the management hierarchy. Like for the low level workers, I think the tools have been out there, which are getting used. Like our developers use Copilot, and ChatGPT is getting used by our sales and marketing and everyone else. But as we move on to the management roles, that's where we are facing some sort of problems where we are unable to find the right tools to do those jobs. So I think that's the part we have to focus on in the future.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's best when you lead by example. So as soon as a lot of these tools came out, the first thing, before even suggesting it to the team, I would try and go and take any of the tools and try to do a simple task, a simple thing that would improve my day to day. So even when ChatGPT first came out, the immediate challenge for any software engineer is, how can this tool help me write better code, maybe, or even automate my writing of code? And then the main worry that we had internally, and even from some of the closer circles of, let's say, software developers, was, oh, is this coming for me? Is this coming after me? Is this going to replace me? And then this is the main hurdle that we had as a business leader in a sense, to make sure that everyone is feels safe using that tool, and that tool is not a competing, let's say, alternative. It's rather a complementing thing that they could do and use in their day-to-day. So maybe that was the first thing that I tried to do, and then of course to try and build something useful with it, and only then would go and suggest to our teams how they can utilize it in their day-to-day. The weird thing though, within our organization, I see the non-tech people are more comfortable using these tools than the tech people, as if it is some kind of a stigma. Oh, I am ashamed to say that I'm using Copilot or ChatGPT to write my tests. So it's a, you know, kind of a weird paradox, I would say. Yeah.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? I've always wondered if it's maybe down to the popular media for that. You know, we've seen probably too many movies like Terminator with Skynet. We've seen Her. We've seen, you know, HAL 9000, you know, literally coming to take over and do us harm. Whereas other folks, it's just another tool in the toolbox, right? It's just another thing to take advantage of.
And I think one of the biggest part, like being a technology leader in an organization, you need to actually educate and counsel like the teams, like how to not like get scared about the replacement. Even though if you are taking it right, then of course adapting these new trends and technologies can actually help you to like operate better, and you can be more efficient with your work practices and everything. But only if you are getting it right. Otherwise, if you are just feeling about like you are being replaced with AI or anything, then you won't be able to give what is expected from you. So like I'm sure you all have been like have been gone through with this kind of conversation and counseling session with your teams in the past for sure.
I think it's about the stigma. Like when a developer sees a tool like that, like GitHub, a Copilot, I think they see it as a competitor to themselves, and they see that maybe in the longer run they'll be replaced by these tools. But what they need to understand is like using these tools, they can solve bigger problems. So it's not.
Right.
It's pretty much like programming, how programming has progressed from assembly language to high level languages and now in Python and SQL. It's just another tool to be more efficient and solve bigger problems. So the problems are going to increase in their size, and these tools are going to help them to solve those problems. And that's the motto that we have in AppVerticals regarding these tools.
Right. And I think let's move to the next topic. And just because you did like touch upon a bit about we being stuck on some old methods, and still we have been struggling to like adapt things completely. But I'm sure like all of you have like more than a decade experience in the software engineering space, and I'm sure you must have transitioned from waterfall methodology to the agile methodology and the development frameworks as well. And we know like historically the waterfall methodology has dominated for the software development for the very long time, over a decade, just because of the structured approach it provides with the well defined requirements if are available. Then that was the first choice always for any kind of software development in the past. But now with the emergence of the agile and the iterative approach of the software development, things have changed a lot. So how did you guys transition from this methodology to the new one?
I think from my perspective, one of the key things is that there is a time and a place. So, I mean, if we think about where the waterfall process come from, the waterfall is the description of the Gantt chart, you know, as it goes down with dependencies of tasks that need doing. And that comes from when you can plan a project from beginning to end. And it comes from civil engineering. If you're going to build a bridge or a building, you've got to know at the beginning what it looks like, and you've got to set the environment so that you can build that project from beginning to end. And at the end, it's going to look like exactly like the plan does when you start. And if you've got a software project that looks exactly like that, perhaps you're replacing an existing system like for like, waterfall is still the way to go. It's a proven methodology. You plan out exactly what you need to do, and then you start doing it. However, the reality is the modern world moves so fast that we're in the equivalent where you start building the bridge from one end, and where the other side of the bridge needs to finish is moved. The world has moved by the time you get there. And that's why, I mean, agile, the clue is in the name. We need to be ready for the moving environment and the moving target that we're going for. And so I think from that perspective, I have seen agile implement it as a rigid process, and that is equally damaging. It also doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think if you go back to the original concept of agile, flexible, adaptable, agile with a small a, I call it. That for me is the ability to start and not know where we're going to finish, but figure it out as we're going along. And the key thing there is learning and metrics and measurement.
Totally agree. As Adam said, there is a tool or a methodology for each and every case, because sometimes when you're early in on the project, even in a more let's say advanced scenarios, when you're creating something from scratch, you would see that sometimes in a startup or in a situation where the stakeholders who are defining the product requirements are outside of the organization that develops the product, sometimes you might find that it is easier to set the first stage or the MVP stage of that product delivery as a waterfall. Because usually what happens is that, and this is probably something that you'll come across quite a lot in your dealings with the clients as part of TekRevol, because when you deal with external companies and organizations, sometimes the definition of feature set might not be complete or might not be relevant or good enough for a software development plan. So that is when you go into a waterfall method, maybe you run it for 2-3 months, and only then switch to agile once you have delivered the first instance of that product itself. Something that we do as well, depending on the feature set, depending on the team that is involved, and depending on the complexity, sometimes we opt to choose still waterfall. Mostly it is agile, or maybe that what we would call a hybrid, but you can definitely see that from within a certain time frame, this is waterfall, and then that is when it switched to agile or proper agile, week in, week out, sprint in, sprint out, if you wish.
That's like I would agree with that to every word you said. Like we as a software consultancy firm at AppVerticals, we cannot follow the complete agile process because that is not something which can be completely mapped to our client's requirement. So it varies highly dependent upon the client's requirements and the position they are in, the requirements, and their industry that they are in, the scenarios that they are facing. So it almost always is waterfall first, and then moving towards agile as the product gets mature and mature with time.
All right, like, and I'm sure, like, of course, like, agile is mostly our favorite methodology most of the time, just because, like, we have been working in this era where we have seen this paradigm shift from waterfall to the agile, and now the teams are operating and they would like to operate in this particular fashion. And even the way we have set up our customers' expectation and the deliveries, everything is now very well aligned with agile. Mostly it is just about not only accommodating the changes or the requirement that comes after at any particular stage, but like in a whole, in a nutshell, if you try to see a picture of any big project, it is almost difficult at this stage, because like, like one of the important part of this topic is basically to discuss about like how, like, the way the technology is advancing, it is getting more complex as well. It is not like really easy what we had to see like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and there were only few options we had, and we were just assigned to like do the job on C++ or maybe some other few languages. Now things have changed a lot, evolved a lot. So how do you see this kind of complex nature of the software development supporting the agile methodology that actually defining the right approach for any consulting organization where they can facilitate their customer better what they were doing in the past? Adam, I think you are on mute.
Thank you for that. Sorry. Yeah, I think that comes down to the key themes of the original Agile manifesto, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. If you end up with rigid processes and rigid tools, it's harder for the individuals and the interactions between them to become the main part of it. And then the other things, working software over comprehensive documentation. A lot of the approaches now is to have the software as a documentation. I think that's a little bit too far on the extreme, but the idea is that you use the platform, the software, the code, the processes as the roadmap, as the map to what it is you're trying to solve, and then collaboration. I think that's just key. And that's not always easy when you're in a consultancy environment, because the contracts have to be looked at. The legals are there for a reason. But the key thing about Agile is responding to change. And I think if you come down to the point where you are responding to changes in the environment, in the engineers, in the software, in the responses, and the data that you're getting back, you're probably on the right track.
I agree. One of the let's say negatives that I found during my let's say career as a CTO, as a technology leader for the waterfall methodology, was the amount of time that is spent before starting the task in preparation, in analysis of the task, and that used to take quite a bit of time, and try to map each and every process sometimes is quite tiresome. It requires certain expertise, not only from a product perspective or from the user perspective, but as well from the inner workings of a system, state management, interaction between different systems, and especially when you mentioned toolings. Previously, maybe when we used to have monoliths, it was easier to follow waterfall methodology. But today, with microservices, it is very difficult, because there is quite a bit of interdependency between teams. And if we followed waterfall methodology, that would be a challenge for each and every team to pick up on any change that happens within the microservices, intercommunication, and so on. So this is a layer where Agile does help, because if a team or a software engineer is ready for change, and change happens in some other part of the system, then that change will not disrupt their work, and they're already prepared that there is a potential or probable change that's going to come in my piece of work. So definitely, tools have changed. I think Agile is more proper for today's ways of doing things in software development.
I think it just depends upon the phase where you are at with your product, and as your product gets more mature and mature, and as it gains more traction with your customers, as your customer bases increases, then I don't think waterfall model can actually support your product. You have to either, even if you don't wish to go for agile processes, you have to adapt agile processes. Otherwise, you are unable to incorporate feedback from the users, and you're left behind in your competition. So it more like becomes a demand from the market to follow agile, and there's no other way to avoid it. So that's what I have experienced in the past on the applications, which were hitting like 1 million of users or 2 millions of users. Following waterfall at that point in time, it's impossible in today's age.
And I think there is one misconception about handling the different kind of software development needs when it comes to the project and when it comes to the product. Sometimes people align this, like the projects are more suitable for the agile methodology, and if you are doing any sort of product, then the waterfall methodology is something that is more suitable. So what is your take on that?
I mean, I think just picking up on what the two said earlier on is as soon as you end up with more than about 10 engineers, you got more than 2 teams, you end up with an interaction complexity that it isn't just additive, it's multiplicative. So the interactions between 3 teams is much more than there is between 2 teams, and it goes up sort of exponentially from there. And so more of those trying to handle change from a waterfall environment, that's why Agile came about. It becomes too complex, too rigid, and too unable to adjust to change. And the one constant we have is change.
Yeah, I agree. Like every day, the technology is changing with AI, and every product now you look every product now going towards integrating AI, and AI is even changing every day. So you have to keep up with that technology shift, and you have to continuously enhance your product. That, like, today you cannot plan for the next 2 months. That is something which is gonna get obsoleted after a month or so. So it's something you have to continuously keep up with, and agile really helps with that.
Right, right. So the next question and the next important key factor about another development methodology and the development approach that has taken a rise in past couple of years is basically the DevOps, and I call it like the critical uh, methodology which has like changed the dynamics of software development and the way we used to develop the softwares before. And it is all about like integrating the development with the operations and focusing more toward the automation and making sure that like there is a concept of now continuous integration and the delivery, and that is well supporting for the customer requirements of high quality deliverables with the speed and the pace. So how do you see this rise of DevOps as a main development approach that was not there before, and how it is helping you and your organization to like deliver faster?
I think it's a natural evolution from the idea of being agile. As soon as you want to be able to learn from a customer's behavior in real time and adapt to that, which is kind of the definition of agile, you need to be able to get changes out to the customer and start learning from that data that comes
Yeah,
back quickly. So we call this the cycle time from idea to deployment, and then we start, being able to act on the data from it. The only way to get deployment chains to be fast is to have them automated. The only way to have
yeah,
them to be automated is to be consistently correct with tests, with automatic execution. Automatic promotion from one environment to another till it gets to production is usable by users, and then you start to gather the data and repeat the cycle. And so DevOps has been born out of straightforward necessity of making it quick and efficient to get from the point when I commit my code to be
yep.
reviewed, to be tested, to be deployed, and get it live in production. So it's become a necessity in order to be able to work in an agile way.
Agree. DevOps is now a key part of any software development cycle. Today, the let's say the holy grail of DevOps would be what one of my engineers jokes about constantly is that our DevOps gets paid to push a button and make sure that there is a green tick at the end of it. And I say, yes, that's because they have done all the required things to automate as much as possible. And
Yeah,
exactly that is where we want to be. So DevOps has definitely become more critical in our industry. For instance, even though the that utopian idea of commit code and deploy immediately might not be feasible just because of the criticality of the system and the fact that the system is 24/7, needs to be up and running as an exchange, as a trading venue. That is why we need to put some checks and controls in place. But even that, we have made sure that that is very streamlined and that there is quite a quick turn around from the moment that we push code, review it, and get the code getting approved and deployed to our production. To the extent that I remember when I started, I always was for peer reviews, for PRs, MRs, and I am becoming less and less enthusiastic by these ideas nowadays. I am trying to encourage every engineer to be responsible for their part of the code, commit directly to main or master branch, and that your code, if you are a good engineer, is going to be on production. Of course, unless that was a critical part of the system, then it would require us to review multiple times and have proper tests. Other than that, every piece of code that gets pushed on one of our main branches would end up in production. And we have a saying, we have a joke, an internal joke. I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. I was saying that we have an internal joke, testing in production. So hashtag testing in production. doesn't go well often, but yeah, we still do it.
I think there's a good trend there as well in terms of testing in production, because then you're testing against real users at real volumes. And often, you can build test environments, but it's often very hard to recreate the exact conditions to trigger an error. So you can put a lot of effort into testing environments and still not find the issues until you get to real world users who might do things you don't expect, try things that you don't expect them to do, and who are operating at kind of volumes that will trigger issues that you cannot see in test. But I think the other thing about DevOps is that DevOps has also now become responsible for a few other things. One of them is cost optimization of the cloud environment, of the tooling environment. And the other thing is the developer experience. Right? Your developers are going to be happier if they have an automated, straightforward, simple, replicable environment. And DevOps plays a big part in ensuring that that is consistent, operational, and a joy to use as a developer.
Yeah, because they are restricted on to their IDs only. Like they are just doing the coding and just pushing the code right from there. They are done. They don't need to care about going to the servers, managing or configuring anything. So it is all being taken care of by the DevOps. It has significantly reduced the time and efforts where we were making a lot of mistakes as well as spending a lot of time to that. So I'm sure the developers are like really happy to see that. Like, okay, they are only focusing on writing the codes and testing it properly, and just they are done.
Yeah, and adding on top of that, like the DevOps is not just limited to the infrastructure getting deployed onto some servers and something. It also relates to mobile applications getting released. So like people from my team were working on, so we use Teams to share the builds first to the QAs, and they test it, and then we release it to the production using the CI/CD pipelines, and it was a hassle for them to actually share the builds with their peers. So they are writing automation scripts just to create builds, so that they don't have to sit at the table and create the builds and share it once they finish. So they just create a pipeline, they push it to get the build done, and it automatically shares with the team and required people. So that is sort of the power of DevOps. It's not just limited to the code getting deployed to the servers. It's everything that can be automated as part of the release cycle. So be it test cases, be it deployments to the server, or be it any other kind of distribution that gets happen within the organization.
Right. So, like, tell me more about your experience. Like, how do you see DevOps being improvised throughout? Like, what sort of actions you normally take to like automation is like one of my favorite topic inside the organization, and like any other consulting company. Of course, we have like different tech stacks where we are working on. In parallel, then of course things have become more complex and managed, of course. But like, how do you see things to be more advanced with the advent of the AI? Like, do you guys implement any kind of AI to the code reviews, or maybe in the pipeline somewhere? How do you see that, and how do you do that normally?
I think what AI is going to bring is much more sort of intelligence augmentation rather than artificial intelligence, because I think it's an addition to the workflow. It's an add-on tool to the ways of working, but they can be used in many different ways. It's like having a fleet of junior engineers to work for you as a senior engineer. For example, you might have one that helps you with code review and analyzing code that other people have written. You might have one that assists in creating documentation. You might have another one that you use in order to generate code in certain areas. And then you might have another one that looks at consistency, static analysis, looking at the outputs of those and figuring out what the most important areas to look at. So I think in terms of the tooling in the pipeline, I think we're going to end up with more tools in the individual engineer's toolbox to use at any point in time. And just like we've done with many of the other processes, we'll end up automating and chaining together some of these things as we go along. But I think automation always starts with systematization. First, figure out what works consistently and can be done the same every time. then turn that into a run book, literally a set of steps written down. First do this, then do this, then do this. Once you've got to that, then you can script it or automate it, and then from there, build it into a tool chain. So I think that the process of DevOps is not rocket science, but it does come down to discipline to make sure that you're automating the right things at the right time, because the trap is you start with too much automation too early and you set yourself down a rigid road, and it's not the right road, and that can lead to a bad place.
I think the main thing about DevOps is automating the things which are in repeated patterns, like you were saying, and with AI, what's going to happen, I feel, is that the repetition tasks are going to be more advanced now, and more advanced tasks will be can be automated now using the AI tools out there. So what I think is now the things that a human used to do can be automated as well, and anything that a human does repetitively using the intelligence in some sort will now be automated as well as part of DevOps. And one of the examples that we are doing in our tooling, DevOps tooling, is that we are now some sort of code review is part of the automation, which is getting done by generative AI. So most of the code review gets done, or a high level of code review gets done by AI, and that's part of our DevOps pipeline. So that reduces the time of peer review, and it's already peer reviewed in some sort of way, and most of the warnings and errors are already identified by the AI, and then it gets ahead into the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely interesting. We haven't had AI, let's say, help us in our DevOps processes and pipelines. But what you just mentioned, gentlemen, when it comes to, let's say, writing documentation, writing tests, code reviews, definitely makes sense. And I am definitely, that's going to be a take away from this discussion, to try and see how we can implement it internally.
And I think we had a comment in the stream as well asking about training. And I think that's another aspect that's important, because we were talking about the fear of adopting new tools earlier on. I think training goes a long way to get engineers over that fear. And if we look at the general trend, is that AI accelerates senior engineers much, much more than it accelerates junior engineers. And so therefore training is going to be essential. Otherwise we won't have any senior engineers left. It'll end up being the same as the COBOL era, where all the guys were retiring who knew what they're doing and everybody else was trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think, and that was like my follow-up question on the same thing, just because like it is our responsibility, like not only to like what we have in our plate right now, but of course training the new generation and like the new lot that is getting into the software development space. Then of course they have the same tools, access the same chat GPT and everything. Then what sort of like, and especially it has something related to the software quality, just because like with these all tools available, you do expect a better code, less bugs with the quality, and you feel like you have, if you like prompting properly, if you have right ability to like ask the right question, then you will be making less mistake as compared to what you were doing in the past. So like how do you see this in your team, and what sort of advancement, what sort of improvement they have shown so far?
I'd say that actually currently people are making more mistakes. The difference is that they're making those mistakes quicker and iterating faster. It takes less time to get the code generation to spit out an answer as a possibility for you to review it and know whether it makes sense, run a few tests against it, try and, you fit it with the rest of your code, and then redo it. And you can do that at a cycle that's much faster than you could do previously. So I think actually we make more mistakes with the AI, it's just that we do it at a much higher pace. And that's where the disparity between the levels of experience come in. An experienced engineer can spot the right answer quicker and integrate that. And a junior engineer might take several more attempts to do that. But what it does do is it accelerates their learning profile when they can figure things out for themselves. And they've got a good starting benchmark with, good test set that they can figure out whether their change that they've just come up with fits into the current code base and environment or not.
Going back to the original question, I think training is something which we as technology leaders have to focus a lot, especially when it comes to AI. And what we are practicing in our company is by kind of like gamifying that learning from to use the AI tools. Like anyone who learns something has to share it, and do tech sessions on it. And based on the number of tech sessions that anyone does, we have to we have sort of created like a leaderboard of sort, and that gets that idea afloated a lot. So everyone is now more interested in using those tools, and then sharing it with their co-workers. So that helps a lot in training.
Yeah, training is a must. Any new idea you have, fear of change, resistant to change, training, introducing the tool, discussing it with a team. That is definitely a must. When it comes to the day to day, at least my expectation is gonna increase from in terms of output, in terms of quality of delivery from software engineers because of the existence of AI. So I don't expect AI to replace engineers, but I do expect it to help them improve their output. Whether it's speed it up, whether it is writing tests and making sure that the code is more correct, all of that would be part of the delivery and expectation from my side, at least.
Right. So another important factor, and I think the way the organizations are currently operating, mostly which I have observed, is like combining these methodologies, especially DevOps and Agile together to create a very strong framework that actually defines the efficiency and more robust software development at this stage. How do you see this, and how do you think this can help like providing and building the better software which we were doing in the past as well?
I mean, I think it's very difficult to divide DevOps and Agile. The two kind of grew up alongside each other, and you really need one to make the most of the other. So I don't think it's really a case of trying to combine them. I think it's a case of using the best elements of both to the highest advantage. And as we said before, that really does depend on the industry that you're in, the norms that there are, and the goals of the particular project or piece of software that you're working on.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't even know that Agile existed without DevOps, to be honest. I always thought that they are they're combined. And to be honest, when I was preparing for this panel, the separation that there is DevOps and Agile, I had to do a bit of research and see, oh, are there two methodologies that differ? Is there something new that I haven't been up to speed with? But yeah, okay. Now the way you construct the question makes sense that they are the same. It's just that each of them are quite important, and as Adam said, I think they go side by side in any company or development environment.
So there's a question we have in the comments.
Riaz, do you want to add?
Can we be certain that a development approach we choose for the project is the best fit for it? And that's actually a really tough one to figure out. And sometimes that's a case of trial and error. But I think by default, most organizations right now would start with an agile approach on the assumption that things are going to change. If you're a consultancy environment, change requests are inevitable. It's a fact of life. And I think if you're in a product environment, you are expecting change. You're planning for change. You start off with an idea of what you want to do, but not a full picture. And so I think the default approach to Agile is probably going to be safe 80 to 90% of the time. Do you guys agree?
I think the only caveat to that is when you're working on a prototype and you know exactly what you want to build for the prototype to raise investment on top of that. That is one place where I have found waterfall really efficient. Otherwise, I agree with you. Like for most of the other applications, it's agile. Even like I used to believe that for internal CRMs that businesses build, their demands are not really varying on day-to-day basis. But I have now learned that that's not the case after working for amount of time in consultancy business. That assumption was completely wrong.
Yeah, for me personally, over the past 2 years within BitFlex, we have ideated, created a lot of processes, changed and evolved. what I would say is very important that we implement agile not only in software development or let's say the Scrum and Kanban way, but as well that we are agile to change in terms of processes. And again, if we want to try with certain methodology, it's important that you're ready for it to fail. And if it fails, how can you make sure that the team spirit is up and that you can literally iterate and create a new thing or a better way of doing day-to-day tasks, still keeping the project on time and the deliverables on time.
I think agile is considered really like interpreted really in the wrong way, that this is like a process, whereas I see agile as a way of working and thinking. It's not a process, it's not a defined process. So if you're facing any problems in the project execution and you're not able to meet the desired results, you might be following some practices that agile is thinking, but you have to identify those problems and build and improve your process according to those problems. So that's the agile that we try to go for. It's not a process which we have copied from some website and we are trying to just paste it in Jira and trying to follow it. So it's not completely like a process, it's a paradigm. Sometimes you are better off creating 2 week sprint, sometimes you have to create 4 week sprint, and sometimes you have to go for Kanban. So it depends upon the use case to use case. Agile, I think, is like you guys said, it's agile. It's the
So it is like
agility in
more
the
of an
processes.
attitude, like yeah, it is
Yeah.
like more of an attitude, like how flexible are you, like taking on the problems and solving them with the right approach and with the right mindset, without like getting into the complexities of the processes or anything. Just be an agile, right?
Yeah, and I
Agreed.
think it
And
also, as these guys said, it depends on having the rest of the organization that can be agile as well. If you're trying to do
Yeah.
agile in an organization where the rest of the company is very rigid in the ways that it works, they're very fixed ways of working, you're going to struggle to implement agile. You're going to struggle to make things dynamic and changing all the time. So I think it's firstly a factor of, can you be agile in the constraints of the organizational setup you have? But then also, as you say, it's a mindset. Can you get everybody into the mindset of being nimble?
Right, right. And I think one of the most, like one of the core question normally I get from the development team is basically, which they see as a downside maybe, but not the case exactly. But how do you control the scope creep, especially in terms of like when you are iterating the project with the different sprint and you are getting a continuous feedback from the customer side, and especially if you're working on a fixed time fixed cost projects model, then how do you see this and handling and control the project in limited boundaries and making sure that all things are delivered on the time with the customer expectation, but at the same time the methodology is supporting the software developer that yes, they have developed the right thing and they are now required to accommodate those changes which were not the part of the original scope. How do you see this and how do you control in your environment and with your teams?
I think the answer is with difficulty and with a really good product owner.
I think
I would say,
it's
yeah, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I would say even that with good engineers, I found out that it's good for product owners to describe what they want to see as an end product, and then for the engineering team, or actually if it is a lead engineer or a group of them, that they are the ones who define what they're going to deliver. I found out that most efficient. It's sometimes, especially when it is a more complex problem to solve, when you're let's say jumping into the unknown. I found out that the closest person to the core problem and solving it might quite quickly outpace the product owner, just because of their day-to-day interaction with that, let's say, source code or the problem statement itself. And if the product owner had the idea of how it should be done 80% to 80% completion, you would see quickly that as soon as the development starts, that the main lead engineer would actually already have envisioned how it should be completed and how the final output should be. So maybe giving some more trust to engineers. And this is a struggle every day that I have with the different stakeholders. So, yeah.
I think, like I mentioned, that it's a mindset, and you have to educate the mindset to the devs as well as the customer. You have to build the right contracts around the customer, so that scope creeps are welcomed and not disgusted upon. You have to educate the customer that the scope creeps are going to happen into the project as we move forward, and this is the process that we have for scope creeps. That's the first thing you have to do with the customer before starting the project, because scope creeps are inevitable. And at the same time, you have to change the mindset of the development team, that it's not the output we want to achieve, it's the outcome that we want to generate. So that's the focus on the mindset, which has helped us a lot in implementing agile for our customer. So I think it's the scrum master has to be the one teaching
Yeah.
everyone about the mindset.
Good, good. So another question from Bilal Abdul Rauf. Don't you guys think that agile can increase the cost of similar projects, smaller projects? In my opinion, incremental waterfall might be the best for smaller projects. So anybody wants
I
to
mean, I
answer?
think this goes back to what we were saying before about proof of concept projects.
Yeah.
It's typical of a smaller project, and yes, it does work very well in an agile, in a waterfall way. So yes, I'd agree with that in general as a point.
I think that's the right thing. Like for a very small project, which is more like a prototype, to raise more investment or proof of concept, waterfall is the right way. But I would say that revisit the definition of cost, because if it's the 100% of 80 hours you have spent, which is going to go down the drain because you're not going to be able to meet the customer requirements, then it's 100% of the cost. Whereas if you have spent 120 hours on building something which is going to generate something, some traction and some value to the customer, then it's not actually a bad cost. I would consider 80 hours as a bigger cost compared to 120 hours. So that's the way I look at it from this perspective.
Right, right. I think we are about to end of the session, and I would like you all to like provide or give one good advice to all the emerging tech leaders and going to be a CTOs. What do you think, with your experience, what they should do and what they should really focus on so that they can learn more from you?
I would say really focus on why you're building what you're building, how it's going to be built, and what is actually going to get built. And then the main thing is to work out who does each of those things. Like in the perfect example, you'd have the customers in charge of why you're building this thing. Your product people are in charge of how you're going to build it, and the engineers deal with what's actually going to be the outcome and the thing that results in at the end of it. And as long as that meets the original why, you're onto a good track.
Agree. And from my side, actually, I'm going to choose Huzaifa had a very good question about whether we need to invest in training existing employees or hire new ones for let's say these advanced methodologies. What I would say, a good engineer is a good engineer. The most important thing or the biggest challenge sometimes is to find a language, a common language, how engineers can communicate among themselves and then with the product owners and then with the other stakeholders. If that is found, exactly as Adam said, I don't think we should be strict with the methodology. Find what works and define who should do what, and then let the magic happen. I don't think there is a need to go just replace the team because they are not comfortable with a change or with a new methodology.
I think it's like my ending remarks would be to focus on adaptability, just adapt to the changes in environment and to look at it as it is and not delve into wishful thinking that this process which I have learned from YouTube or this thing which I've learned from somewhere is going to work for me. Just look at the environment you're working in and look at the things that you can add to solve the problems. That's the biggest thing which I have learned from being agile.
All right. And the last thing about the audience who wants to like get in contact with you people. So of course, our PR team will be tagging you on the post. But apart from that, is there any other way they can get connected with you? If yes, then kindly share over here.
Yeah, sure. So the easiest way to get hold of me is on LinkedIn /in/Adam Horner.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Halid.Musa. I will share it in chat. But I think you will as well add our contacts there. So anyone who's interested could reach out.
You'll have to attach mine because I don't remember.
All right, all right. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Esteemed panel and the expert, of course, like very insightful session, and the kind of course, the feedback and the comments you can see on the channel. So I think people have learned a lot, and they whoever will see these videos even after later, of course, they will be learning more. So I thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insightful experience. It has been amazing so far. Thank you very much again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye.